me. Betrayed and foolish. That's how I felt when I learnt I'd been paid 1/3 less than the rest of the team for doing the same job. I'd been promoted internally and hadn't even thought I needed to negotiate my salary. I was just feeling a bit excited about getting a raise and was grateful that I was the one who'd been chosen. But ripped off was what I was. And when I look into the gender pay gap data, I find that I'm just a walking, talking statistic, because women are paid less over and over again. So not only are we denied the ability to buy the most amazing shoes, you see those? We are denied the ability to feed and clothe our children and to live somewhere warm and to save for our retirement. So I've had a look into the research and I've found a new way, a new strategy that can help close the gender pay gap. It's a realistic strategy, it's an achievable strategy, it's a sensible strategy. Hey, it's even an idea worth spreading. Women and men, all of you here today, all of you watching, tomorrow, ask your employer, are women paid the same as men in this organisation? Imagine with that one question, if we all asked, what could happen? Back in the day, the gender pay gap existed simply because men were paid more. There were even women's pay scales for jobs that were lower. Today, for every dollar a man earns, women earn 88 cents. And for our Māori and Pacific sisters, the gap is even wider. 2 decades ago, we would have explained this, and that women aren't as well educated as men, or we don't work in the high-paying professions. But research released this year shows that job choice and education level play only a small piece of the gender pay gap. What's driving the gender pay gap now is things like sexism and discrimination against women in the workplace. So women are as well educated as men. We work across a wide range of professions, but yet the gap has stayed the same. Only the reason for why it exists has changed. And for a country that prides itself on giving everyone a fair go, that's a pretty big slap in the face. So this sexism and discrimination, what does it look like? Well, from my experience, it can be very, very subtle and very unconscious. A while back, I was going for a job interview for a senior role, and when I walked in the room, one of the male panel members looked me up and down. I just felt absolutely revolting. It was completely inappropriate behaviour, but I doubt he even knew what he was doing. And sexism and discrimination is woven very subtly into our everyday language. I refuse to be called the chairman because look at me, I just simply ain't. And using that term makes assumptions about who should be in the role. And you know, it's not a man, it's me. But sexism and discrimination can also be right there in our face, right? In a previous role, I worked out that I could do the job, I could deliver everything that was needed, I could be an absolute superstar, and I could still pick my kids up from school a couple of days a week. So I went to my employer and asked for flexible work arrangements, you know, like the law allows. But I was turned down. I was turned down because that's not how the employment contracts were structured. That is, that's not how the employment contracts had always been structured for the mainly older men that usually did the job. And so I spoke to some of my colleagues, and most of them were immensely sympathetic and supportive. But some took the view, even by asking, I was clearly demonstrating I wasn't committed to my career, right? And that I was totally letting the side down because I wasn't prepared to work every hour that God gave me. And it just proved what they might have already known, that I was a bit of a slacker. And even both men and women took this view, even women with older children. I did it hard, they seem to be saying. You should too. And these are the kind of behaviours that are driving the gender pay gap at the moment. And so, women, you'll have similar stories about being oogled at, about being blocked, about being pigeonholed, about being labelled, about having your confidence dented and your options narrowed. And men, if you ask your mum or your sister or your lover, your girlfriend, your colleagues, they're going to tell you very similar stories, because sexism and discrimination is everywhere. But we are waiting for someone else to solve it. They need to fix it, right? They are to blame. And by they, I think we usually mean government or big business, right? But the gender pay gap is driven by how we treat each other. And I think we're the someone else. This one's on us. But don't get me wrong, I think the government has an amazingly huge role to play in reducing the gender pay gap. Our Australian neighbours, right? They have a reputation for being sexist, or being quite sexist. Apologies to, well, not really any apologies to any Australians here. But their government, over there, every organisation over 100 people has to report their gap. The Australian government has taken a huge torch and shined it right in the issue, and their gap is trending down. And governments in Europe and Scandinavia have done the same thing. But we here, the country that values equality, well, we're well behind the 8 ball. But waiting for government to solve the gender pay gap cannot be our only solution. The government is not at our water cooler or in our meeting rooms or making our hiring and firing decisions. But we are. We're right there. And if we want something to happen, we're going to have to make it so. As a nation, we are absolutely crap at talking about money. And this drives the gender pay gap as well. Now, I want you all to do something for me. I want you to turn to your neighbour and tell them how much you earn. I actually wasn't saying a joke, but I've never seen so many horrified people looking at me, right? Did anyone actually do it? Did you actually tell the truth, the 2 people in this room that did it? I don't think so. It's okay, I understand how hard it is to talk about money. I remember the exact moment when my little daughter said to me, "Mummy, how much do you earn?" I just froze. There is no way I'm ever going to tell her how much I earn, because she might tell someone at her daycare. Talking about money is completely taboo. But because none of us know what each of us earn, some employers can pay some of us less. And it's in the silence that the gender pay gap flourishes. So let's solve it. Let's do it. Let's put on our superhero capes. Let's put our undies on the outside and get to it. Sexism and discrimination is driving the gender pay gap. Sexism and discrimination is in all our workplaces, and we are all there. And by we, I mean both men and women. So let's have one conversation, even have one email, one action. It'll only take 5 minutes. Ask your employer, are women paid the same as men in this organisation? Now, they're going to have to answer you. And most organisations will be completely onto it. They're going to tell you what the gap is. They're going to tell you the strategy they've got in place. These organisations are heroes. We should want to work for them. We should buy their products. And we have some amazing examples in New Zealand. A big shout out to IAG, to Sky City, and to ANZ. ANZ in particular has really got into its gender pay gap. They've made every role flexible. They've extended paid parental leave, and they're investing heavily in their women leaders. And in doing so, they're getting a reputation for being a great place to work. And in the race for talent, they're going to win. But some organisations aren't going to want you to ask. They are secretly hoping that their gender pay gap will go away by itself, or they haven't even looked into it. Let's get these organisations working. But you're sitting there and saying, Joe, well, that's a great idea, but what if there's some sort of backlash against me if I ask? Or what if I'm labelled a troublemaker if I ask? 5 minutes of uncomfortable is a pretty small price to pay for the hundreds and thousands of women who are paid less than their worth. But I have got some strategies to make it easier for you. Why not ask in a group? There's always safety in numbers. Get a group of men and women together and ask at your next team meeting. Or get someone to ask on your behalf. Get your union rep to ask on your behalf. Get your manager to ask their manager. And tell them that it matters to you that people are treated well and treated fairly in your organisation. You can also use the power of competition. Hey, you know, rival organisation X, they're sorting out their gender pay gap. What are we doing here? Or actually, I think I've got the ultimate strategy for you. Are you ready for this? Just blame me. In the weekend, I went to TEDx and I saw this woman and she dared me to ask. There's lots of resources online about having courageous conversations. Practice with a friend, practice in front of a mirror. But be very clear, this isn't something women should do alone. Men, this one's for you as well. Ask on behalf of your mother, of your sister, of your brother, of your girlfriend, of your wife, hopefully not at the same time, of your lover. Ask on behalf of your daughter, so she doesn't have to live a life of being paid less than her worth because of her gender. And ask because it's just fair. And that's who we are. We're fair, right? And paying women less just isn't. We could reach tipping point if 100,000 of us just asked. One action, it would take 5 minutes, one conversation. We can do this. Ask your employer, are women paid the same as men in this organisation? Encourage your friends to ask, are women paid the same as men in this organisation? We can do it, we've got it. Just ask. Hashtag just ask. Tweet when you've done it. Hell, tweet me when you've done it. That's the idea we're spreading.